Okay, it looks like we're live here. And we're just going to wait a little bit to get started. I want to make sure that we have people have enough time to enter the webinar. Okay, we have people joining here. And it is 12. Okay, we have quite a few people already here. So maybe what we can do is we can get started here. Okay, let's actually get started. Okay, well, hello and welcome to Crossing the 49th, a cross-border tax and financial planning podcast. I'm your host, Phil Hogan, and today we have a very special guest, Elizabeth Long. Elizabeth is a leading immigration lawyer in Canada and a partner of Long Mangalji. Today, she's going to present, so she's done a presentation for us, and she's going to go through some ways to come to Canada to work or study, avenues for obtaining permanent residency, tips on sponsoring your spouse, and what to do if your application is denied. So I thought maybe a good idea, Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be here, Phil.
Maybe a good place to start, if you could just give the audience just kind of an overview of your kind of journey into immigration law. I think that'd be a nice thing to hear.
Sure. So I came to Canada when I was 5 years old as a temporary visitor, actually. I was supposed to come in here for only a few weeks to visit my father, who was an international student in Vancouver at SFU. And you know, it ends up, I stayed a few decades afterwards. And now I help many people come to Canada as well.
Oh, great stuff. Great stuff. So I think what we're going to do today, Elizabeth's going to go through the presentation. And I think it'll be a good idea, you know, as we kind of try to make this as interactive as we can. Big thanks to everybody that sent in questions. We got a lot of questions. Won't be able to get to all the questions today. Elizabeth has those questions. She'll try to kind of pepper them through the presentation. But we also have the Q&A feature here. So as Elizabeth's getting through the material, please feel free to add some questions and we'll kind of pick through them. And if there's something there that we really feel kind of fits in, we'll answer them. And once again, I'll compile these questions for later if we don't get to all of them for sure. And I'm just going to check here. Okay, yeah. And if anybody finds that there's an issue with the audio or the video, please just put a little note there in the chat. And I'm just going to make sure that everything's working properly here before we get started. Looks okay. Now, can somebody just so we can test this, can somebody just put a quick little note in the Q&A or the chat just to make sure that this is working properly? Is there somebody there that can just throw something in there for me? Just want to make sure that it's actually working here. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yep, we're getting a lot of
questions. That's perfect. Okay, good stuff. Okay, so without further ado, maybe we can get on to the presentation, if that works for you, Elizabeth.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Well, yeah. Well, really happy to be here, everyone. So, Phil, are you seeing the right screen right now?
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, that's
okay.
perfect.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about some Canadian immigration solutions for you guys coming from across the border. And I wanted to start with talking about first of all, the different kinds of immigration status that you can have in Canada. We start off with temporary residence. So you can come in here as a visitor. You know, as Americans, you can come across the border without any visas or even ETAs as well. You can, you know, come into Canada, but you can't stay forever. The default when you come into Canada, if you don't have, you know, anything other than a stamp, or even if you don't have stamps, sometimes they don't even stamp, is 6 months as a visitor. But you can also stay longer if you have a visitor record, where the officer allows you to stay longer, or sometimes the officer may not want you to stay that long, and they'll have a certain note on your passport to say that you can only stay for a certain amount of time. You can come as a temporary worker or a international student as well. And we will speak about these options, because these options as to come to Canada first as a worker or as a student can be very important on your journey to becoming the Holy Grail in Canada right now is the permanent residence. That's the most difficult status to get. And once you have permanent residence, to keep your permanent residence, you stay in Canada 2 out of 5 years. That's the normal rule to keep your permanent residence. There are 2 exceptions to the rule. If you have a spouse, a Canadian, or who is outside of Canada, and you're accompanying your spouse. So it's we're going to talk about spouses, but that's if someone you're married to or you're common law with, and you're accompanying them, that time is counted towards residency in Canada. And then if you are working for a Canadian company and that company sends you outside of Canada, that time that you're working for the Canadian company is also counted towards residency in Canada for the purposes of maintaining your permanent residence. As a permanent resident, you can basically do almost anything that a Canadian can do. You can work anywhere, study anywhere, go anywhere, and you're allowed to stay in Canada. Your social insurance number will be the same as a Canadian citizen. But as a Canadian citizen, you will get your passport, your Canadian passport. You don't fear losing your status, even if you didn't reside in Canada, and you can vote as well. Okay.
Can I just ask a question about, so the student visa, is there an age restriction on student visas, like a maximum age restriction, or does that matter at all?
There isn't any age restrictions for study permits.
Okay.
For study permits, you have to show that it makes sense for you to study. So let's say you are a mature student, haven't studied for a while, the officer may wonder, why is it that you are applying right now to go to school? And you have to explain that. But if you have an adequate explanation, then the officer is still well and able to issue you a study permit.
Oh, great. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so just wanted to have a quick note about citizenship. So you can get citizenship 3 ways. By birth, you're born on Canadian soil. You're naturalized, you've gone through the immigration system, obtained your permanent residence, and applied for your citizenship. Or from your parents who were born or naturalized. So we no longer allow citizenship to be passed throughout the generations without, for example, if your grandparent was born or naturalized in Canada, you no longer can get citizenship through your grandparent if your parent was not born or naturalized in Canada. So it's just one generation that it can be passed down. Okay. Phil, do we have any questions about this one?
Not this one, no. And I'm not sure if you want to go through and see if there's anything that's popping up from the Q&As.
Okay, I think we had some questions from before, where they had sent some questions there. I believe someone had said what the process and time and length of time for minor kids to become citizens. So it doesn't matter if they're minor or not. It's all around the same process. If you are already a citizen, but you need to be recognized, you need to have a Canadian citizenship certificate because you're not born in Canada, maybe it's passed down to you, then you'll have to apply. Before, it was a few months processing time. Now it can be a lot longer to apply. The processing times are posted online. I think the last time I checked, it was well over a year to get your citizenship certificate. But the processing times change all of the time. the fastest way to do it is to apply. And
Sure.
there's not a lot you can do to speed something up unless there's an emergency. Just submit the application.
Is there a way to know like how many are actually in the queue at a particular time?
Not necessarily for this kind of application. Some of the other applications there are, but not for this one.
Oh, okay.
You can apply for recognition of the citizenship anytime. So you can do it inside Canada, outside Canada. It's really, it's a recognition. You're not applying for citizenship. It's just to recognize that it's citizenship. Now, if it is that you're not a citizen, or your kids don't qualify to be a citizen per se, then they would have to apply through permanent residence and be naturalized. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's talk about spousal sponsorships. Now, in Canada, we have a certain kind of relationship that we recognize to be equal to a married relationship. I think that's a little bit different from the States. When I go to the States, before I was married, I was common law with my partner, and I would say, we're together as a family because we're common law. And the officer in the States would say, we don't recognize common law. In Canada, we recognize common law as, under the immigration law, people who have resided together in a conjugal relationship for at least 1 year. Okay. And so that's very important in both sides of the coin. The first one is you can sponsor each other, that you are together as a family. But also, if you are in a common law relationship, and it doesn't matter, how serious you think your relationship is, you have to state that you are in a common law relationship on your application forms when it asks you for your your marital status. Okay. And so it's the other situation when we're looking at spousal sponsorship is whether or not the sponsor, the Canadian or permanent resident who's sponsoring the person, is residing in Canada. If you're a permanent resident, you have to reside in Canada in order to sponsor your spouse. If you're not a permanent resident, you're a citizen, it is possible to submit the application to sponsor your spouse, even if you're not living in Canada. However, you have to provide evidence that you will be returning to Canada as soon as your spouse gets permanent residence. So the third question is, what do you do when you're waiting for permanent residence? If you were, a lot of times people, you want to move up to Canada right away. The spousal sponsorship can take around a year to process. So what do you do in the meantime, right? If you are applying from inside the country, you can apply for a work permit while waiting for your permanent residence. Now, because of the backlogs, that work permit may take 4 to 6 months to come. If you're applying from outside of the country, so there's two parts, inside and outside, you don't get a work permit, but it's also sometimes it's a little bit faster. Sometimes you can travel back and forth, and there are also appeal rights as well. So it is a question oftentimes that we have to decide with our clients whether or not to apply inside or outside of Canada and what to do in the meantime. Sometimes even if you're applying for the spousal sponsorship, you may be able to get a work permit through an economic category. For example, one of the free trade agreements that we'll be talking about as well. And so that's something, it's part of the entire plan as to what to do while you're waiting for your permanent residence as well. So I've talked about the inland versus overseas. There's a big difference into which category we're applying under as well. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, just going back to that last slide, because most of the clients that we're seeing coming in to Victoria and Canada are often you might have individuals who have gone down there from Canada 20-25 years ago, and they're returning, and one of the individuals is both the US and Canadian citizen, and they're sponsoring their spouse. And they often know, well ahead of time that they're going to be retiring back to the island or to Canada. So
Yeah.
if they, if these couples know this, like how early should they be planning for this? Like if they knew within 5 to 10 years they're going to be retiring back to Canada and they need to do the spousal sponsorship, like how early would you get ready for that?
So that's a really good question. A lot of it has to do with residency in Canada. So normally we want to start applying when we know that you're going to be the sponsor, the Canadian or permanent resident is going to be back in Canada in around a year's time.
I see.
Because
okay.
Well, if it's a permanent resident, we can't even do the sponsorship unless they're in Canada. If it's a Canadian citizen, we could apply, but they have to show that they're going to be in Canada as soon as we get the permanent residence.
I see. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Someone had asked as well previously if age is a factor for spousal visas. No, age is not a factor. Also, it's not a requirement for someone to be working in Canada in order to sponsor as well, or be earning a certain income in order to sponsor as well. You have to show that you are not on social assistance other than for disability reasons, and that you, when you are sponsoring someone, you are responsible for them for 3 years after they get permanent residence. And that person that you are sponsoring cannot be on social assistance for 3 years as a spouse as well. So you have to show that there is a way for you guys to support yourself financially. Okay. Okay, and someone has said that their husband is disabled, and the husband is blind, and the husband is a Canadian. Can he sponsor? Yes, he can, as long, like I said, as long it's not about even if he is not earning money, he can sponsor. If he's on social assistance because of disability, you're still eligible to sponsor as well, as long as you can show that your family can support yourselves in Canada. Okay. Any other questions, Phil, at this point?
Not about that, no, unless there's something that popped up in the Q&A that you think is relevant, but no.
Oh, I haven't been monitoring the Q&A.
Oh, okay, I'll
Okay.
kind of go through it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, just wanted to quick note about the in Canada versus overseas. So we have two different routes for spousal sponsorship. When we're going the overseas route, you have to do it if your sponsor is Canadian and you're sponsored from outside of Canada. Okay, inland you can only sponsor when both people are inside Canada. Okay, so if you're a Canadian, you want to sponsor your spouse, you have to show that you intend to return back to Canada. Why is my slide? So, and we talked about if they're PR, you have to live in Canada. The processing time is around 1 year. Sometimes we see a faster processing time in overseas processing compared to in Canada processing. There's also a lot of travel. When you're sponsored inside Canada, you're supposed to be residing inside Canada. Let's say you want to sponsor, but you want to come to Canada, but you don't want to leave your job yet in the States until you get permanent residence. You can stay in Canada. In those cases, the overseas sponsorship is better because, inland, in Canada, you're supposed to be residing in Canada. Okay. when you're looking at in Canada, if you're legally in Canada, you will get a work permit while you're waiting in Canada. You can still sponsor even if you're not sponsor a person, even if they're not legally in Canada, but they won't be eligible for the work permit while they're waiting. Okay. All right. I wanted to go.
And sorry to cut you off. So maybe what we can do, and some of these I'm not sure how deep you can get into, but I'm just going to try to pick out those that might seem relevant here. I mean, one question is, I'm a citizen. Do I apply for my children before I arrive for PR or citizenship? So I guess that would be somebody that is already a Canadian,
Yes.
and wanting to apply for their kids.
Yes. So you can apply for your children. I don't know if your children, when they were born, if you were already a citizen. If it's that case, you don't need to sponsor them. They are already citizens. They just need to be recognized as citizens. You'll need to apply for the citizenship certificate at that time.
Oh, okay, great. And maybe, and I'm not familiar with this one. Somebody was just asking a question about a C11 visa. I'm not sure if that's even relevant.
We'll talk about those. That's an entrepreneur work permit. Yeah.
Great. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about economic programs for permanent residents. So if you're not lucky enough to be married to a Canadian, what can you do? So we're going to be talking about different programs. There are federal programs such as Express Entry. Okay. A lot of you may have already heard about Express Entry. Express Entry is points-based system, and we'll be talking about this, but this is mostly for people who have skilled work professionals, and it's gone through a lot of changes, and it will go through a lot of changes as well. By the way, what we have here is what is true today, but immigration changes all the time. For example, just yesterday, we had a huge change in the occupation codes in the system. And next year, it's anticipated that there will be big changes coming for Express Entry as well. So if you want to sign up to our newsletter, that's the only way that we are able to update people on how to on the new changes to immigration as well. Okay. So last year with Express Entry, what happened was the government filled up their spots too fast. They filled up everything for 2022 in October of 2021. So there was a pause on Express Entry. And as a result, Express Entry, what they do is they look at your points and they skim the cream, essentially is what they call it. So they take the top, thousands of people who have the top scores, and they keep doing that every 2 weeks. Now, usually they're supposed to do it every 2 weeks, but they pause it for around 9 months. And as a result, that cream got very, very thick. And so the points you'll see have become very, very high, where the points are slowly dropping as they are now doing regular draws as well. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. There are strategies that you have to think about for Express Entry.
So sorry, so does that mean that it just got really competitive at that point?
Yes,
when it got
absolutely. Express Entry, since COVID started, has become extremely, it's always been competitive, but since COVID started, it's been extremely competitive, especially for those who are outside of the country, who do not have the work experience inside the country. Okay.
Oh, interesting. So just like, let's say from my perspective, because we've hired quite a few accounting staff on PRs and whatnot. So these codes that would be, I guess, are they just based on supply and demand for the industries within Canada that the government kind of deems to be in demand? Is that how that works?
So right now, Express Entry is based on high skilled work experience.
Yeah, okay.
But next year, it's been talked about by the government that they want to go more occupation based. So to see which occupation is needed in the industry.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
What is the way that they may go. We'll see how, we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, just looking from my wife works in the hospital industry, and just that. So is that the idea? So if you like, instead of skill based, you knew you needed nurses or you needed ultrasound technologists, you would just do it like that?
That's
Is that
right.
the idea?
They may
Okay.
have draws, for example, just want people in healthcare industry, or they want people in the occupations in demand industry. I
see.
mean, it sounds great to me, though I'm not that supportive of it, because I think a lot of it has to do with lobbying by industries as to what is
Oh,
needed, who is
fair enough.
needed. And
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of jobs are so nuanced that you don't know that they're even out there, but they are very needed by people who actually need them to work.
That's a
So
good point. Yeah. Yeah,
so
for sure.
there is good and bad points in terms of this. The government has stated that, well, it's in the legislation that they need to have consultations with stakeholders. I actually testified before Parliament on this particular point, because it was something that I raised my concerns about the lobbying and these, and so now they actually have to have consultations with stakeholders before they put in these provisions, but it's coming.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Well, when you speak to them next, let them know that we need more accountants in Canada.
Yes, I mean, yeah, we'll see how it goes. It could be that people who already have jobs in Canada, they may be also selected.
Sure.
We don't know. That's the problem with immigration. It doesn't go through Parliament anymore. It's just ministerial instructions. And so very little debate, and they just make changes like that. Okay. The second program that we can talk about is startup visas. Startup visas are they're a really interesting area of immigration law. Basically, founders of innovative companies who come to Canada it can be up to 5 founders together can start businesses if they receive a letter of support from incubators or angel investor groups or venture capital groups that are designated by the government. Then you can apply for permanent residence as well. So that's an interesting one for a lot of entrepreneurs. And then we have different programs like the RNIP, Rural Northern Immigration Pilot, and Atlantic Immigration Programs. These are programs that the government has said that they want to attract people to areas where there may not be a lot of people and they need people to go there. For example, the RNIP has a lot of smaller communities up north, in Northern Ontario, some in Alberta and BC, that if you get community support and you have a job offer in those communities, then you may be able to immigrate. Atlantic immigration program, similar in the Atlantic provinces. If you get a job from Atlantic, the employers have to be designated, and then you can also apply. And a lot of these, you can apply even if it's a low skill job as well.
Can we just move back real quick to like the startup visas?
Sure.
Is there any restriction for individuals coming up knowing that like US based investors will be investing in these companies, or is there kind of stops in place that if people are coming up and running these companies, that they will have Canadian investors? Because that was an issue in the past where a lot of these Canadian startups were funded by US companies or individuals and then got pulled back down to the US.
No, so the requirement is that the founders together own at least 50% of the company together with the investor groups, etc. But you can have investors from the US and
but they own more than 50. Okay, so that's
so the founders who are trying to get permanent residence in Canada have to own most of the company.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And so then we also have self-employed artists and athletes. If you've been able to be self-employed for 2 out of 5 years, then and you can show that you will be making a contribution to Canada, then we can apply for permanent residence under these categories as well. for athletes, if you can show that you're going to be able to contribute to Canada as well through your sport as well. Hong Kong programs, that's a special one for people from Hong Kong. Caregiver program, I'm very disappointed with the government on the caregiver program. This was a program where we were supposed to bring caregivers up here with work permits and get them to permanent residence after they've been working in Canada for 2 years. The new program opened in 2019. Most of these applications have not yet been processed. So
that's really interesting and unfortunate, because the amount, especially within that and the need going forward, is so significant. We talk to people about this all the time. So and was there a reason why that kind of got pushed back?
Government backlog. It's just everywhere, this government backlog. But I really think there's something else going on in this program. It can't be that it takes that long to process. And because of this program, you can no longer just apply for a work permit on a regular LMIA route for caregivers anymore. They stopped that as well. So basically, people in Canada, they don't have anyone to take care of their children or the elderly or disabled people. Like, let's put it this way. If you were looking for someone to take care of your baby in 2019, your kid would have been in preschool by now. By the time you can get someone over, they'll probably be in school already. It's really, okay. And then we also have provincial nominee programs, and I'll be talking a little bit more about what these entail as well. And so we have difference between federal programs. So the federal government is in charge of immigration, and they have their own programs, but the federal government has also given provincial nominee programs to each province, to allow each province to select the people that they want to get permanent residence as well. Okay.
And we did have, sorry to cut, we did have one question. I'm not sure if you can answer this here, about the startup visa that came in a little bit earlier. So please compare and contrast the 350K or 250K option for the startup visa program for the permanent residency.
There is no 350K requirement for startup visa. There may be different investment requirements for people who are applying under different incubators or angel investor groups, where those groups are saying, if you want to work with us, you have to invest this amount in your company. I mean, it just depends on who you're working with and what your company requires in terms of investment. But there is no set amount by the federal government as to how much you have to invest in the startup visa.
Okay, well, hopefully that answers their question. That's great. Thank you.
I just want to have one more point, which is that for Quebec, so all of the federal programs that I'm going to be talking about and the provincial nominee programs, you cannot want to stay in Quebec. Okay, if you live in Quebec when you're applying and you can't show that you're going to leave Quebec, or you say that you want to live in Quebec, then you don't have access to express entry, to any of these programs under the federal programs. That's because Quebec is Quebec. You know what I'm talking about. It's one of those.
I'm from Quebec, so I know.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Originally. Yes. Everything is different in Quebec.
Everything is different there. They're very protective of who they want to come into the province, including they want people to speak the French language, etc. And so it becomes quite difficult as well. Quebec's immigration is a lot more demanding, especially in terms of language, and especially with regard to the length of time. For example, express entry, if you get invited to apply, you can get permanent residence in 6 months. For Quebec, you're probably looking around 3 years or more to get permanent residence.
That's interesting. And I wonder if this is just anecdotal, but I seem to remember last year, lots of tech individuals moving to Montreal and getting able to get in the system. Is that coincidental, or is that? Something was
So
happening last year?
Montreal has a very robust tech industry. I mean, there's a lot of Canadian companies that have gone to, that are in Montreal. They've done a good
Sure.
job of attracting tech companies there, but they should probably talk to the Quebec government about their immigration policies, because it's because the work permits are a federal program and workers can go to Quebec and work there. But to get permanent residence, they still have to go through the Quebec immigration. So we see a lot of tech workers who are saying to us, we don't want to stay in Quebec. Can we work remotely and go to Ontario, and then we can immigrate through express entry? So yeah.
Oh, okay, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Just wanted to quickly sort of give you a picture of some pathways for workers. Pathways for workers, if you can get a work permit, you work in Canada, that's the way to get permanent residence for a lot of professionals who may not have enough points for express entry if you're just in the States. Okay. Getting the work experience will give you a lot of points for express entry or qualify you for other programs such as provincial nominee programs. The key is, how do you get that work permit? And we'll talk about that in a bit. One of the ways to get a work permit is if you studied in a public university or college. Don't go to the private ones. You won't get the post-grad work permit when you graduate. Now, the post-grad work permit is what I tell people is a golden ticket, just like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Okay. It is an opportunity for you to have an open work permit. You don't need to have a job offer to get a postgrad work permit. You can work for anyone you want in Canada. And that is very important, because most of the time when you see these job postings, they will want to know whether or not you have the ability to work for them right away. If you have the legal ability to work for them, and you say, no, I don't, I need you to help me get a work permit, a lot of the employers will be reluctant to do so. But if you have a postgrad work permit, which is an open work permit, you can say yes, and you can start working for them right away. Some of the things to keep in mind for the postgrad work permit is, because you only get one golden ticket in your lifetime, you have to be very careful as to the program that you're going to do. If you're doing a one-year program, you will only get a one-year postgrad work permit. That may or may not be enough for you to get permanent residence, to have the work experience or the job offer. If you do a two-year program, you get a 3-year work permit. If you do a one-year program and then you do another one-year program afterwards, you also get a 3-year work permit. Okay, so it's not that I'm saying, yes or no, whether a one-year program is enough. We would have to look at your entire circumstance and then make a determination on that. Okay. I think we had a question, Phil, from before.
Okay.
They were saying, well, they're older, they're in their 50s, and they say, well, can I just come to Canada and get permanent residence if I study in Canada? And I say, that is very much a possibility. As Americans, you can apply for the study permit at the border. You're the only country that can do that. And if you have your approval for your acceptance for your school, and you can convince the officer that you genuinely intend to study, then you can get your study permit. There are a lot of provincial nominee programs that that don't look at age, and they will allow you to immigrate if you have a job offer. Express entry, if you have enough points for it, the age does matter. We'll talk about that. But at a certain point, after 45, it doesn't matter anymore, because you have 0 for age. That's fine. You don't have to worry about getting older, after that. You just have to have enough points otherwise. So certainly getting a postgrad work permit, being able to work in Canada will help you get to permanent residence.
Okay, great. And we had some, and we're getting quite a few questions, trying to parse through some of them. This is going back a couple slides though. Company ownership. Is it realistic to create a company ahead of time with my partner so that she can own 50% plus, knowing ahead of time that she'll be moving here and applying for PR?
So I think that probably goes more into the entrepreneur pathways that I'll talk about.
Okay, perfect.
Is there other questions?
Will you be going over ICT visas?
So I will be talking about some of the work permits, I think. Yes, I'll be talking about work permits afterwards.
Oh, okay. And maybe can you just speak a little bit to so from the perspective of somebody immigrating to Canada, but if you had a company that was, let's say, like an accounting firm that knew that they could hire, pick a number, 3 to 5 skilled individuals under these programs, like how would they go about? Would they just contact a firm like yours to get that help, or is there a different route for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways, there are different kinds of routes for entrepreneurs. You can do the startup visa if that works for you. The nice thing about the startup visa is it's a permanent residence application from the outset. So you're applying for permanent residence. You can also get a work permit to work in Canada while you're waiting for permanent residence. There are other ways to do so as well. So one of the things that we can do is, for example, have someone transfer themselves to Canada. If you have a company in the States and that company is going to continue to run, and you want to open up a related company. Let's say you want to open up a subsidiary in Canada. Okay. So that's where what we call ICT, intra-company transferee category. We're going to transfer yourself to Canada. You can transfer yourself. You can transfer other senior managers or specialized knowledge workers to Canada. Okay. In these kind of cases, we want to have a very robust business plan to say what you're going to be doing in Canada, what the business is going to be doing in Canada. Oftentimes, the first work permit may only be for 1 year, even though you can technically get a 3-year work permit, because the officer may want to see, are you actually going to be running the business in Canada? Okay. But this is not something that is passive. So if you're going to be doing this, there's nothing where, oh, I'm going to, buy it for, however amount of money. I'm just going to pay money and that's it. And I buy my permanent residence. It's not that. It's not passive investment. It's active management of your company. And we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of permanent residence for entrepreneurs, because if you were able to show that you are a senior manager of the company in Canada and you are working in Canada for at least 1 year, you will get arranged employment points, 200 points for express entry as well. So so if you bear with me, I'm going to talk about express entry first, and then we can get into that just a little bit more. So for express entry, here's how it works. You have to create an online profile. You qualify under one of 3 categories: federal skilled worker, Canadian experience class, or federal skilled trades. Now, when you create an online profile, you're going to need to be in the pool for at least, you can be in the pool for 1 year. Just because you're in the pool, though, make no mistake, you have not applied for permanent residence yet. Okay? Just because you're in the pool doesn't mean you have a chance to get permanent residence yet. You're just a candidate. You get a series of points based on your background, and if you have provincial nomination. And then every 2 weeks or so, the government has a draw where they have invitations to apply, and they issue them to maybe a few thousand, 3,000, 4,000 people each time. Okay. And they look at your points, but starting 2 years ago in 2020, they also start looking at sometimes which category you enter the pool. And next year, they may look at other criterias, such as your occupation, maybe if you have a job offer, etc. Okay. So let's first talk about how you can enter the pool. So many of you, even if you do not have any work experience in Canada, can enter the pool through the federal skilled worker class. It takes this is one of the oldest classes of permanent residence in Canada. My father went through permanent residence through this class decades ago. But it looks at your score, it looks at your background. But now just because you can get into the pool, it does not mean that you can get out. Okay. The second one is the Canadian experience class. Now the work experience, to qualify for this, the work experience that you have to have is 1 year of high skilled work experience in Canada. That is, you have to be an employee in Canada, and it can't be when you're a full-time student. Okay. The federal skilled worker work experience, very, very different from the Canadian experience class. There's also the skilled trades. It's not well used at all. It's for the people in the trades. And most of the people who fall under this, they will also fall under the Canadian experience class. So let's talk about factors which will give you points. Age is a big factor. Once you get to your 30s, your points start coming down, -5, -6. When you get to your 40s, it's -10 and -11. 45, it doesn't go down anymore, okay? But the bad news is you have 0 compared to someone in their 20s who has over 100 points. So not a lot you can do about age. Apply earlier when you can. And if you are older, then we may need to look at other ways to bolster your points. Education, we have a very competitive system right now. If you do not have work experience in Canada that counts, like I talked about for the Canadian experience class, then you need to have probably at least a master's or at least 2 post-secondary degrees or credentials. Language, Americans, hopefully your English language is great. You do have to do the exam, whether or not English is your first language or not. It looks at reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And I highly recommend that even if English is your only language, go and do some practice exams, because I have seen a lot of people who English is their only language, do really badly on these exams because they don't know what to expect. Okay. Relevant Canadian work experience, that's the work experience I was talking about with the Canadian experience class. That gives you significant points, which is why, going back to the previous slides I talked about for the workers and the students, it's important to be able to work in Canada a lot of times to get your points up. Outside of Canada, foreign high-skilled work experience is important. By the way, I talk a lot about high-skilled versus low-skilled. And that's a big differential in Canada with regard to your ability to apply for permanent residence. We just had a new occupation classification code come in, where the government has now had a lot of changes for certain occupations which were previously low skilled to now be high skilled. For example, truck drivers are now high skilled. Tattoo artists are now high skilled. So there has been a lot of changes right now in this classification code as well. Okay.
And is there somewhere where you can actually go and look at this list and see?
Yeah. Yes. If you Google NOC codes, okay, you can get it'll show up and you can put your occupations in. And now we're using, prior to yesterday, we were using 2016. Now we are using 2021 system, not 2021 system. Spouse can add or take away depending on how super your spouse is. Provincial nominee programs. So it's not every provincial nominee program that will give you points for this. It has to be an express entry linked provincial nominee program. If you get a nomination under express entry linked provincial nominee program, you'll get 600 points for that. Okay. Previous study in Canada, you'll get some points. arranged employment. You won't get arranged employment points with open work permits like postgrad work permits, but you will get them with a LMIA, which is a labor market impact assessment. Employers, they would have to show they can't find a Canadian to do the job, or other employer specific work permits, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this, for example, if I did a C11, which is an entrepreneur work permit, you could get arranged employment. Similarly, if I did intra-company work permit, you could get. So a lot of entrepreneurs, if you can show that you're a senior manager, executive manager, it has to be very, very high executive manager, you can get 200 points. Other high-skilled workers get 50 points for arranged employment. Okay. And if you have brothers or sisters who are a Canadian permanent resident in Canada, that's their fluency in French is a big factor as well. You get a lot of points if you're fluent in French, and you can pass not only it's reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So it's not just speaking. Okay. And then trade certification. This is for people in the construction trades, essentially. Okay. All right. So quickly, just wanted to talk about provincial nominee programs. Every province has their own program. I do not have time to go through every province right now, but just know that what happens is the federal government has given the power to the province, each province, to select the people they want to get permanent residence. But then the federal government, once they've selected a person and have given them the provincial nomination, it goes then to the federal government, who then reviews admissibility factors. And so these admissibility factors are important because, for example, a lot of times they won't allow refugee claimants to apply. Or if you have a criminal record, right, that would be an issue, or medicals. Okay. But the most of the work is done by the province to select the people that they want to get permanent residence. There's a big difference as well. You have to know that there's express entry based that will give you 600 points for express entry, where you're basically assured to get an invitation to apply, and non-express entry based, which is completely separate from express entry. Express entry based, you have to already have a profile in express entry. If you qualify for both, I would normally go express entry, because express entry, after you get your nomination, you get 600 points, you can get permanent residence in under 6 months normally. The non-express entry are for those people who won't be able to go through the express entry programs. They're separate. They will normally take around 2 years to get permanent residence from beginning to end. Okay.
And we just had a question. This might actually be relevant here, and you might have answered this, but is this ranking system specific to express entry pool, or only this ranking for all applicants? Does that make sense?
The ranking system that I talked about, that one is express entry.
I see.
It's not provincial nominee programs will have their own selection. And there are many programs for provincial nominee programs. But one of the
Go ahead.
So I mean, one of the main things that you have to know about the provincial nominee programs is you have to show that you intend to reside in the province. So before you get permanent residence, if you move to another province, if you show that you don't intend to reside there, then you're not going to get permanent residence, even if you get the provincial nomination and sitting with the federal government. So normally provinces can decide these things rather fast, 3 to 6 months, for example. But the federal government is the one that takes a long time. It takes 19 months or so for them to process it. Okay. So this intent to reside in the province, even if you have provincial nomination and it's sitting with the federal government, if you move to another province, then your application will likely be canceled. So you have to stay and live in the province, or if you're outside of the country, it's okay, but you have to show you have intent to go to the province until you get permanent residence. After you get permanent residence, you do have the right to change your intention and say, I want to live in Quebec. I want to live, in another province. You do have the right to do so after you get permanent residence.
That's interesting. So how does the competition between, because I would imagine that, each one of the provinces is going to try to attract as many, individuals as they can, especially in this environment. So how does that competition play out between the provinces?
Yeah. So the provinces, they have a dual sort of, it's competing interest. One thing is they want to attract more people to their province. And the other thing is they want to attract people who are going to stay in their province. So one of the things, so it might be, for example, the programs, for example, in Saskatchewan might be easier than the programs in Ontario. But you have to find a job in Saskatchewan, and it might be easier to find a job in Ontario. Okay, so each province, they will have, they constantly change their programs as well. They look at what other provinces are doing and what's being successful in other provinces. There are entrepreneur programs as well for different provinces. I say normally for those entrepreneur programs, if we can avoid them, we do, because they take a very, very long time to process, around 5 years or so before you can get permanent residence. Whereas if we were able to go through intercompany or C11, probably get permanent residence after 1.5 years. So but there are entrepreneur programs in provinces, there are skilled worker programs, there are students. Most of these provinces will want you to have a job or significant ties to the province. There are some provinces that do not require that. They look at, for example, Ontario has one called the tech draws. So if Ontario says we need tech workers, if you you have a background in tech and your points are at a certain level, we will invite you to apply. We'll send you what's called expression of interest, and then you can apply with us. But most of the provinces will want someone who's studied and especially have a job offer there. Okay. All right, we're running out of time, so I'm going to just quickly go over work permits. Now, work permits, here are some of the popular ones that we work with a lot with Americans. Intracompany. To qualify for intracompany, you have to be transferred from a company outside of Canada. You have to have worked with that company for at least a year in a substantially similar position to what you're going to be doing in Canada. The companies in Canada have to be related, or it could be the same company that opens up an office in Canada, okay? And the positions have to be either senior management or above, or if you have specialized knowledge, you can be transferred to Canada. Free trade agreement. So the former NAFTA, now called CUSMA, free trade that we have with the States, allows American citizens who are of certain professions, who have job offers of those certain professions, for example, management consultants, engineers, certain professions. There's a whole list. If you are on that list and you have a job offer on that list, we can apply directly for a work permit for you. Postgrad work permits I talked about for international students. Open spousal work permit. So if you have a work permit that allows you to work and you're working a high-skilled job in Canada, or if you have a study permit in Canada, your spouse, your married spouse or common law spouse is entitled to an open work permit. So labor market impact assessments, LMIAs, is the one that is the default. Okay, so normally, in order for an employer to offer someone a job and for that person to qualify for a work permit, they have to do what's called an LMIA. They have to advertise, try to recruit Canadians, and show that they cannot find a Canadian to do the job. There's a subset of the LMIA called the Global Talent Stream. that is quite exciting, especially for the tech industry. To apply under the global talent stream, tech workers the employers don't have to do the recruitment of Canadians. They have to show that they are going to provide labor market benefits to Canada, such as hiring Canadians, other Canadians for their company, or training Canadians, etc. And it's a very fast application. It's around 2 weeks processing time for that. There's also, if you are an innovative company in Canada and you want to attract some high-level individuals, you can also use this stream as well and bypass the recruitment. Okay. Francophone is a nice one for people who are fluent in French. If you're fluent in French, then you can also get a work permit as long as you are going to be working in a high-skilled job outside of Quebec. You don't have to be speaking French in your job. You just have to have the ability to speak French yourself. Okay. And finally, the entrepreneur work permits. There are two kinds of entrepreneur. There's a C11, which is for everyone. And then there's one that's related to the free trade agreement. It's called the entrepreneur investor category under the free trade agreement. It's very, very similar. You have to show that you are going to provide benefits to Canada under the C11. Under the investor, you're entitled as long as you're going to be doing significant contributions to the business in Canada as well. Okay, so any questions at this point, Phil? Or?
Yeah, we have some that might be going back a little. I'm not sure exactly how many more slides we have, but so this, my wife and I got a master's from University of Toronto in the 70s. Do we still get post-grad permits? So that's going back a few slides, but. So
if they graduated, they have to graduate from a Canadian university in order to get postgrad work.
Okay, so yeah, so University of Toronto, but in the 70s, I guess, is there?
Oh no, you can only apply for postgrad workers within a limited period of time. So within 90 days is normally what I'm recommending. Even though the website says 180 days, you lose your status in 90 days. So my limit is 90 days. Yeah.
Okay, so 70 is a no then. Okay.
No.
Okay, and then is there a calculator where one can tell their possible number of points? Is something like that available online?
Yeah, you can go on to the IRCC website. I have to say though that a lot of times I get clients coming to me where they put in their information, and because it's a computer generated thing, they came out with the wrong points for them. It's really depending on how you put your information into the pool. Okay, is that it? Okay.
There's one, sorry, the one that just came in, let's see how relevant. I heard medical exam is waived for temporary status applicants. Is this correct?
No, it's not waived for temporary residents. If you are from a country that does not require, if you have been residing for more than 6 months in a country that does not require medicals, then you don't need a medical to come to Canada unless you wanted to work in healthcare or with children. Then you will need to do a medical.
Okay, yeah, great.
All right, so just some quick points with regard to next steps. The first one is please have a plan as to what you need to do. Don't just go on the internet. Don't just ask your friends. The immigration system is very, very nuanced, and every little fact that you might think is not important could be very important as to how you want to structure your life. So make sure that you are speaking with a lawyer, a Canadian immigration lawyer who knows what you need, everything about immigration and how to structure your plan. Okay. After you have your plan, you have to execute. That seems simple enough, straightforward enough, but it's not easy, right? You have to get your programs. You have to be willing to do and sometimes it may not be worth it for you to do so, but if you do want to do it, then you really have to look at your finances, look at your time, and look at the energy that you're going to need to put towards studying for your exams, even your language exams. Even your English is there, but you have to put the effort in. And so, that's something that you have to see whether or not you have the energy and the means to do that. Make sure that you stay in status. Canada is a foreign country. It's not a country where you have as of right to stay in Canada. And so if you are out of status, it could be very difficult to bring you back into status. So make sure you stay in status and don't misrepresent. There are so many fraudsters in the immigration system that will say, oh, it's so easy. You just give me some money and I will make it all go away. I will make it all okay. And I will get these documents. You don't even need to know what I'm going to submit. Please do not go down that path. As Americans, you do have some advantages with regard to the system. But if you do misrepresent and you are caught with misrepresenting, you will have a 5-year ban from applying for permanent residence and from entering Canada. And even after that, you have a huge black mark against you. So don't get caught in that trap. If your application is rejected, hopefully you would have worked with the lawyer from the beginning and you won't get to that stage. If your application is rejected, please contact a lawyer right away. There are very strict federal court notice periods. It's 15 days if it's inside Canada, if your decision is made inside Canada, 60 days if it's made outside of Canada. If you go beyond that period, you will not be able to apply for the federal court for judicial review of your decision. Also, if you call the call center, the call center is not someone who's on your side. The call center is on the government side. And every time you call them, these agents, they may give you information or tell you to do something that is not in your best interest. And that may not be correct. They give wrong information all the time, and they're not held accountable to that. You can't say, oh, the call center agent told me to do that. It's not an excuse according to the law, okay? What you do when oftentimes you call the call center and say, this is unfair, this is what happened to me. They'll say, oh, okay, just write into immigration, or, oh, okay, I'll put a note in the system for you. That is considered, if you do that, that is considered a reconsideration. And if you don't do it properly, then you want to go to, and it gets refused, then you want to go to a lawyer. We can't necessarily do another reconsideration. You only get one kick at the can for this, okay? So if it gets rejected, go to a lawyer right away. Don't try to fix it yourself. There are also a lot of timelines involved as well, okay? So you may be out of time after a while to reapply, restore your status, etc. Okay, so that's it. That's all I have for myself today. Do sign up to our newsletter if you can. Go onto our website, www.lmlawgroup.com. And do we have any more questions, Phil? Or are we?
Yeah, so we have a couple here that have come in. And what time is it here? Because we have, okay, yeah, we're getting pretty close on time.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many can a US citizen get permanent residency for being an investor incubator for a founder in a startup visa? I guess you've already covered that. I guess we've already kind of went through that. How many Canadian employees must you hire if you're opening a branch in your American company under the ICT? I'd be transferring myself in as my own to open it. Do you have to have a physical office or can it be a home office?
That's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to have a physical office per se, but you should have an office and sometimes even a virtual office as well. With regard to how many people you have to hire, it depends on the business plan. It's not a set number. But oftentimes when we're applying for express entry, if we're saying that somebody is the CEO of a company, and we're saying the executive manager, but they have no one to manage, then that could be difficult to explain how they're an executive manager as well.
Perfect. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a lot. We had a big thank you, so that's nice to see. Now, the best place, so the best place for people to reach out to contact you, is it just the email on the screen here? Is that the best place, and
Yeah.
the phone number there?
Yeah, inquiries@lmlawgroup.com. I think email is easier to do, and we'll have your information as well there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I butchered the name of
yeah.
the firm, or so it's Mangalji. Is
Yeah,
Mangalji?
Long Mangalji, Long Mangalji, yeah, and it's
Okay.
you can call us as well, 416-548-9101. But usually I like email. I'm a email person. I respond to emails pretty fast, but phones, I don't know, what is it about phones
I'm
like
right there
that?
with you. My voicemail even says that you're going to get a better response by email.
Email, yeah.
It's just lots of people needing to contact, which is great. So yeah, everybody make sure this last slide here, all the contact info. Is there a way for people to sign up to the newsletter, like on the website, if they visit the website?
Yes, go on the website, just scroll down, and it'll be a place where you can click on the button to sign up to the newsletter. I highly recommend the newsletter, just because we don't advertise, because immigration law changes so much. That's the only way we can reach out to people who come to our seminars, because what I tell you today could very well change, next week, next month, definitely by next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I think just like on the tax side, as things change. So yeah, so make sure you sign up to their newsletter, because that's a great way to get info on those changes. And what we'll do here, I'll post. So this will get posted on the podcast and the YouTube channel, so it'll be available for people. And once again, if anybody has, we got through a lot of questions today, and really thank Elizabeth for her time, being very generous with all this info.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah,
and,
just to make.
And if you want, we can also send out these slides to everyone as well.
Okay, yeah. So what I can do is in the show notes for the podcast and the video, I'll include all that, and I'll include links to the back slide here for all the contact info.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody will have all that info. Yeah.
And you know what, Phil, if it's okay with people, I can just sign up everybody who signed into this thing. It's just who signed
sure, yeah
into the newsletter.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, just unsubscribe. Click that button, unsubscribe, and but it's maybe easier for people to do that.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, if nobody else has any more questions, another big thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you. That's great to hear. So yeah, this was great. Once again, thank you for jumping on with us and doing that, Elizabeth. That's amazing. And maybe we can do this in the future, something a little bit more specific. This was a really great overview that most of the people on the Facebook page really were asking for. So this is great. Once again, everybody, this will get posted on the Facebook page and the podcast channel, so look out for that. Thanks again to everybody, and to Elizabeth, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
Thanks, Phil. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.